Let's get everything cool, calm, and collected. Let's get it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Truth Podcast. My name is Neek Robinson. I'm the host of this show, of this podcast, and today I wanted to bring back another solo podcast episode and just talk about some topics that I wanted to talk about today. But today's main topic that I wanted to talk about was about this idea of that timing is everything. That is something that I truly believe in, is that timing is absolutely everything in this world. As of recently, like, I've done a lot of traveling. Went out to Los Angeles, California here about a little over a month ago now. And, you know, this is something that taking this trip out there, I learned a lot. And I've kind of been like this huge advocate of somebody that is always preaching like you don't have to move somewhere to do this, that, and the third, or you can make it happen where you're at and everything like that. But, you know, I was out in Los Angeles for about 4 days, and it was very mind-opening, to me, or eye-opening to me. And it honestly, like, it shocked me to a sense of that, you know, without going out there and actually experiencing that for myself, I don't know if that would have changed my mind. But I think that it did to a certain extent, because I was there for like 4 days, like I said, and I feel like I made some good connections with people, just based on having little conversations with people. And I think that is something that's very important, is like these baby conversations that you have with certain people. Like, I met a couple different guys that after I went to this film screening, and, you know, just sitting down and actually talking to these certain people it's so crazy to me that you can learn these little things and you can build these relationships just based off of having a casual conversation with somebody. And, you know, that's all about timing. Like, had I not went out to Los Angeles, I wouldn't have made these certain connections and everything else. And, you know, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about this on this podcast and everything like that. But yeah, it was crazy having that experience, man. And I think that Los Angeles isn't the only place to have those connections, but, you know, you can honestly, like, it kind of contradicts of what I was saying earlier about, like, you can make it happen where you're at, because I think that you can. It's based off these connections that you have. It's really, connections is key to everything that you need to do in life. But it all comes back to timing. And so basically, like, when I was in Los Angeles, like, I went to this film screening by Justin Escalona. He was displaying his new film that he's trying to sell to, like, Netflix and places like that, and get it into, like, the film festival circuit and all those types of things. And I was sitting there waiting for the film to start, and I was talking to these guys. They were from Ohio, I believe. One was actually living out there currently. The other two actually flew from Ohio to go out to Los Angeles to watch this film. So I was kind of in the same boat as those two guys. But the guy that actually lived in Los Angeles, his name is Eli, I believe, or Elijah, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, like, we were just sitting there and just having a good old chat, waiting for the film to start up and everything, just kind of talking about stories and swapping stories and all that. And, you know, sitting down and just talking with him, I learned, like, so much about this guy. Like, it was crazy to me. So, like, basically, like, long story short, Elijah has a YouTube channel, and he I am, like, drawing a blank on what the name was, but he has worked with people like Logan and Jake Paul. He's worked with people like Yes Theory, which are huge YouTubers. And I think that Elijah and his buddy, his roommate, I think, run this channel, and they have about 80,000 subscribers, and they have a couple of like 1.4 million viewed videos and stuff like that. And then they said that they had like 100 million viewed video on Facebook. So yeah, like sitting down and like having this conversation with this guy that, like, you know, if I wouldn't have had this conversation and if I wasn't sitting next to him at this correct time, I never would have learned this about him. So, you know, and we kind of just clicked. I told him that I had a podcast and everything, that and we just kind of swapped information. So like I got his Instagram, all that stuff, and I told him like I'd love to get him on the podcast eventually. He said he'd be down. So, you know, that those little connections, man, and like learning about timing is absolutely everything. Because had I not been in that space, if I had decided not to go out to Los Angeles, California, my life would be a lot different. And, you know, it's these little key things that, you know, making these baby connections with people that can ultimately like put you onto a different path. And I think that, you know, I've been kind of toying with this idea of like, should I go out to Los Angeles and everything and like all this stuff. And like, I really do want to go out to Los Angeles, and I think that that will happen in the near future. But, you know, I'm having in my mind at this moment that, you know, timing is everything. Like I wanted to talk about in this podcast, that, you know, it'll happen the way that it needs to happen. It'll ultimately, like, when the timing is right, I will make the jump and make the move out there. You know, I've had like a lot of just eye-opening experiences coming back to my hometown of Des Moines, and just like connecting with other people here. You know, there's been multiple occasions where I was actually in a coffee shop. I think it was Smoky Row, two different occasions. I was at Smoky Row a couple weeks back doing some podcasting with a couple of buddies of mine, and yeah, so like long story short on that, we were basically just talking. We talked for about an hour, a couple of guests that I'm going to have on here in a couple of weeks. But after the podcast concluded, basically two different people came up to me and they were like asking if I had a podcast and whatnot, and they kind of wanted to get the inside scoop of it and all this stuff. And I was like, whoa, like that's super dope that, like, you know, I could get these people to kind of come over and just network with me and just you know, just sit down and talk with me. I think one of the guys that I met, I think his name was Brandon, if I'm not mistaken. It might be Brandon, I'm not too sure, but basically, like, we sat down and just had a little 30-minute talk after my guests had left, and we were just kind of talking and swapping stories and everything. And I told him, like, hey, man, like, I would love to get you on the podcast, too, just to, you know, network with everybody, because I think that not only is networking key, but I think that timing is everything. And I think that, you know, this guy that I met in a coffee shop, you know, he felt like he was struggling in life a little bit. We kind of learned a lot about each other in like the short little conversation that we had, and just having those moments of, you know, just sitting down and connecting with people is like something that I strive for, not only with this podcast, but in life in general. You know, and I think that it's super dope that, you know, I was literally doing my podcast and, you know, just having a chat with one of my guests, and then somebody came over afterwards and I got to actually connect with another person, you know, so it's kind of like killing two birds with one stone on that. And I thought that was super cool, you know, to kind of just, it just brought new people in. Like, I had no idea who this guy was. He didn't have to come over and talk to me, you know, and I think that it all comes back to that idea of timing is everything. And, you know, I'm hoping to actually get reconnected with this guy that I met. I gotta like look through my phone messages and everything, but, you know, just reconnecting with those people that reach out to you. You never know what these connections can do for you in the long run. So, I'm all for like just having genuine friendships and connections with people, regardless of the walks of life that they're on, so that's something that I strive to do is like, I'm never going to burn a bridge, or, I'm never going to like say, nah, bro, like I'm not going to talk to you, like all this stuff. Like I legitimately, like if I could get every single person on this earth, like the whole 7 billion people on this earth onto my podcast, I would love to do that. Legitimately, it's not going to happen, but, I would love to make a dent into that because, this is something that I love to do. And, I'm thinking in the future that, maybe I'll up the podcast episodes to a couple times a week or whatever, but, that'll come with time as well. But yeah, getting into another story about, meeting people at Smoky Row. I met, I think it was the day after that podcast. So basically I went to Smoky Row 2 days in a row to get 2 different podcasts filmed, with 2 different guests and everything. And, I was wrapping up with this other guest, and this woman comes over after, and she starts talking to, me and my guest, and it was so weird. Like, she just came over and she was like, hey, are you guys done like doing your podcast and stuff? And I was like, yeah, what's up? And then we just kind of had a conversation, and she was actually trying to start up I think a company here in Des Moines, in the Des Moines area, and she's been wanting to start a podcast of her own and like all this stuff. And she is getting ready to open up, I believe, it's like a creative studio kind of deal, so where people can actually like do things like podcasts and all these like creative things, and like have a space to do it. And she offered me that like some free studio space if I ever needed it for my podcast, and she offered to say like she's told me that like I was great at speaking and I was a great interviewer and whatnot, and she asked if I'd be interested in like speaking at an event when she was getting ready to do her events in like July or something like that. Like I had no previous contact with this person. I believe her name was Brandy. I'm not too sure if I'm saying that right. It's in my notes as well. It's in my phone. I haven't talked to her in a couple weeks, but yeah, like, just having like that to me was just crazy. Like I had no previous contact with this girl, and she comes up to me, and I was giving off this good energy throughout the entire podcast, and I'm a very loud speaker, so it's kind of hard not to hear me, but that probably kind of helps a little bit. And I feel like I'm a very like open and welcoming guy, so it kind of brings people towards me. It's just kind of the vibe that I give off. That's kind of what I'm kind of picking up. But it was just interesting, man. Like this random stranger that I had no idea who she was until we just sat down and had a conversation, and she ends up offering me some dope stuff to like help me run my podcast and like just to ultimately get my name out there more. I think that alone just shows me that what I'm doing it means something, and not only that timing is absolutely everything. Like had I moved my podcast back a couple weeks, I wouldn't have met her. And like it was funny because like the guests that I had on that day, we were going to do it at the library, I believe, and it was going to be like a couple weeks prior, and we and his car had some problems because it was like during this snowstorm that we had and everything, and his car wasn't starting up and all this stuff, so we moved it back a day, and then his car got some more troubles the following day, and then I was going out of town, so it was like all this stuff kind of led up to this one podcast. And then it ended up I met this person that, you know, I could ultimately like build this good relationship with, and, you know, create some dope stuff, and just, you know, have a space to like do my podcast out of and everything like that. Ultimately just shows me that, you know, everything happens for a reason. Not only that, but, you know, timing is absolutely everything. And, you know, I think that this is something that I would definitely advise everybody out there in the world to just go for, is just like think about it in this one standpoint of that, you know, timing is absolutely everything. And, you know, if you feel like the timing isn't right, you know, just follow your gut. If your gut's telling you, you know, that maybe it's not the right time, you know, then listen to it, because timing is absolutely everything. But I think that, you know, there's also this gut feeling that, you know, if you feel like it's good and it comes to mind like in your head multiple times, then, you know, I think that there comes to a point where you have to actually take that leap of faith, and you actually have to learn to kind of balance the two of, you know, listening to your gut, but not only that, to just kind of take a leap of faith sometime and once in a while, you know, because you never know what could be on the other side of, you know, taking that leap or listening to your gut. So, you know, it's weird because like I've done kind of a lot of studying on this, you know, and like it kind of comes back to this idea of like, you know, what if I would have taken a left instead of that right, you know, how different your life would be. And, you know, that is something that I kind of think about very often, actually, you know, like if I hadn't made like certain connections in my life, just how different my life would be right now. You know, I think that honestly, if I hadn't started this podcast, let alone, I think that my life would be a lot different. I don't know exactly what I would be doing. And this has only been, I think, yeah, I've been going at this for 21 weeks now. This is the 21st episode of the podcast, you know, and just, it's crazy how giving your life this structure and putting yourself on this like time schedule can really change your life in a sense. So, you know, I think that it all kind of boils down to the idea that, you know, find something that you're very passionate about and, you know, learn to just go with it and run with it, because you never know what's going to be on the other side of you following your dreams and following your passions. So, really, I think that that's all that I really wanted to talk about today, and I think I'll leave it off there. But, you know, if you guys are ever in the instance that, you know, you feel like it's maybe not the right time, or, you know, on the flip side of that, you know, you want to make this drastic change in your life, or, you know, you want to do something a little bit different than everybody else is doing, I'm not going to tell you to switch around your life into a complete 180, but, you know, follow your heart, man. And I think that you will see big changes in your life if you just follow your heart. And just to kind of be aware of this timing thing, because, you know, this is just me sitting down and like reflecting on these, couple of instances where, you know, I've made some connections with people and just kind of talking about it on a podcast. You know, I think that it's very interesting that, you know, this idea of that timing is everything, because it literally can make or break the person that you are. Like if I had the podcast previous, and, you know, I didn't meet this person, who knows what would be so different about my life. You know, I think that it kind of gives me this this backing of that, you know, that I'm on the right path and everything like that. And I feel like I have all these instances in my life where, you know, I feel that I'm setting out to do exactly what I'm wanting to do, and I think that if you have that gut feeling inside yourself all the time, then that means that you're on the right path. So, you know, that's kind of the whole gist of what I wanted to get off my chest today with this podcast. But yeah, that's really it, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you guys for watching, and thank you guys honestly for just supporting the podcast these past weeks, man. It really has changed my life a lot, man, and this is only the beginning of everything. So I've got a lot of guests that I want to get kind of back onto the show and everything, and onto the show, and just pick everybody's brains. So honestly, if you guys are out there and you guys are watching this podcast, feel free to hit me up and just say, hey Neek, I would love to get on your podcast, brother, and I would more than love to get you on as well, and just sit down, and we can sit down at a coffee shop or whatever, and just swap stories, man, and just have a fun time. You guys can get a free water bottle from Life Water. Shout out to Life Water once again. They need to sponsor me, but it's cool. But anyways, I'm dragging this out, man, but it's cool. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for tuning in to today's episode of the Truth Podcast. My name is Neek Robinson, if you guys don't know. But ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today's episode. We're out. This has been another episode of the Truth Podcast. My name is Neek Robinson. We out of here. Peace. Peace, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.